Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. Today is Friday the 3rd of January and a Happy New Year to everyone. Franny, I've not seen you since the New Year, so a very Happy New Year to yourself. Really good to see you. It's the first pod that we've done since the start of this year. And obviously we're going to be talking about the Celtic and Rangers game. But anyway, before we get into that, welcome to the people in the comments. Hope you're all doing well. Franny, how are you? How was Christmas? How was New Year? Good to see you, mate. What's happening?
I sent yourself Happy New Year yourself, Gavin. Christmas was good, just up at the sisters with the sort of immediate family and stuff. Had Christmas dinner there. We tend to go up to my sisters and have Christmas. So I was up there then. Boxing Day was kind of quiet, and then suddenly just out of nowhere I ended up riddled with some bug, and I was done for about 48 hours just in bed really, and I've still just no proper I'm 100 times better than I was this time last week, but I've just still feel like it's just kind of lingering still there, and I've not properly shook it. So I've not enjoyed the festivities as much as I should have. I've not been overindulging in food because I've not had much of an appetite. I've not been drinking a lot because I just can't be bothered because I've been too tired. So I feel like I've not enjoyed Christmas how you're meant to enjoy the sort of Christmas period this year, Gav. Then obviously we'll get into it. Yesterday didn't help things either. When I started to kind of feel a wee bit better and could have a wee drink, we got served up that yesterday.
I know how you feel. Well, I'm glad that you crawled out your sick bed to make it for the podcast, and I appreciate that. It seems that me and you are the only two healthy people in the Endless Celts. Everybody's
there's a few sore heads a day.
Exactly. Well, to the people in the comments, again, thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. So we've got Christoph, we've got Jamie, and we've got Christoph and Jamie again. Happy New Year, boys. Happy New Year. In terms of New Year, are you a man for resolutions? Is that something you ever do? I've heard some people say in your life you shouldn't wait till New Year. You should just do it right away. I don't know if that's too philosophical, but what about you? Have you got any resolutions?
I wouldn't say so, Gav. It's just, if that's what people want to do, it's what people, I kind of get it. It's the start of a year and things. So if people want a focus and that gives them a fresh start, I totally get it. But personally, it's not my gig, mate. I just get on with things, really. What about yourself? Are you involved in that?
No, not really. But this year, I think I might. Since I became a dad, I've never really found time to read books. I used to enjoy it.
Right.
I bought myself a book and I'm hooked. I'm halfway through it. I'm going to be gutted whenever it finishes. But and I've made the time to read, because I'm enjoying it. So I just realised that I'm just making up excuses. So I think I would try and make more time to read books this year. But we'll see how that goes anyway. But the book I'm reading right now is called Matterhorn. It's about Vietnam. It's a guy who was a Marine back then, and he wrote a fictional story about just like a made-up, character, and just using his experiences to kind of paint this story. It's been brilliant so far. Anyway, so Franny, we're going to talk about the Celtic and Rangers game. So it was the first game of the new year, and we came away. We got dominated. We get beat 3-0, and it was a really, really difficult game and result and performance, especially to take. What get your thoughts? There's obviously, we'll get into the flashpoints. We'll talk about the goals. We'll talk about individuals. Talk about why this happened. Did we see it coming? We'll talk about what we can do to prevent it. But just to start off with the lineup itself, I guess the only kind of maybe talking points were, the left back situation. It does seem like there's not one particular person who's got it nailed down. So Taylor, maybe his experience that got him the nod over Vi. And you also had Engels, who had been playing in the last two games. He got a goal, he had an assist. He was looking quite good. His confidence was up. But I think on the day of the game, he might have had like a little illness, a little bug, which might have stopped him from starting. So he was on the bench. But certainly he comes on. But anyway, so it was Bernardo and Hatate. Either of them got the nod over Engels. What was your thoughts on the lineup itself, and would you have went for something different?
I mean, the probably only change I would have made, Gavin, was maybe Engels for Bernardo. Simply just off the back of Engels' last two performances. Not to say that Bernardo would be playing poor. It's maybe harsh on Bernardo in that sense, but that seems to be the argument. Is it one of the two vying for that sort of third position? I feel like, but in the main, no issues with the team. Absolutely zero. Again, probably if you asked me just over a week ago before the week, not yesterday's game, but the weekend game where Kyogo got the 2 goals, as a probably plump for Adam Reid in this fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Kyogo gets the 2 goals, and he is a big part of this fixture, or certainly has been in the past. So totally understand him coming in. So maybe hindsight, and I kind of flirted with the idea. I think it was James had kind of brought it up the other day about the midfield three, and who would everybody be. And I kind of asked the question, would you play McGregor, Bernardo and Engels for the sort of energy and dynamism and stuff like that, just to try and maybe overrun Rangers a wee bit and overpower them, and then maybe Hatate later on comes into it. I appreciate it's a big gamble. I personally never seen that myself. Hindsight, maybe that was a better option, because as we might get into, Hatate had a really poor game. But in the main, Gavin, I had zero issues with the team. Hands out, I had no problem. I was more than happy with the team. As I said, Bernardo, maybe Engels for Bernardo, but that was simply how Engels had performed the last 2 games, and not a slight on how Bernardo had been performing. And I suppose if you look at the previous fixture at Parkhead, Bernardo, I think he walked away with the man of the match and only played 65 minutes. He was absolutely brilliant that night. So, and we know how well he can win the ball back, and that's that cliche, the midfield tends to win these games. So I kind of understood Bernardo being in, but no, zero issues with the team as we've seen it, I feel like. But as the game progressed, I had a lot of issues with the team, Gavin. I always say.
I never had any qualms with the lineup. I guess maybe the other kind of selection that you could have maybe went for is Trusty or Scales, but it seems that for that game anyway, Scales had earned back the favour, and Scales had obviously played in these games before. You know, whenever we were right under the cosh, when it was him playing centre back along with Lagerbielke, he came up trumps. You know, he got man of the match when everybody was writing him off. So Scales, you know, Taylor and Bernardo started, and I thought Bernardo was the right shout as well. I felt that we do need an element of physicality, and I think that Bernardo manages to kind of hold his own in these games. I've always felt that Bernardo was very, very good at recycling possession. He would always be able to take the ball whenever he had somebody on him, and he wouldn't lose the ball. He normally managed to find the pass. So yeah, in terms of the lineup, I was happy with it. But the other kind of question I wanted to bring up and to the viewers as well was the kind of the psychology going into the game itself. Celtic were playing with the motivation of going 17 points clear. Rangers were playing for pride, you know. They have had 2 really, really horrendous results against Motherwell and St Mirren. Well, they were hoping if they had won them, then they'd be looking to bring the gap down to 6 points. So they had that disappointment there. However, they also had maybe a renewed belief in their own performances after the cup final game against Celtic. Yes, they lost the game, but I feel personally that they were the better team on the whole. And I think that kind of gave them a renewed belief. So at the same time, the disappointment of them dropping points in the past 2 games, but them knowing that they can go toe-to-toe with us in a one-off game. Who do you think had the psychological edge going into it? Do you think that there was just too much of a motivation for Rangers? Not that that's an excuse for the performance that we turned in, but do you think that there was just more riding on it, and especially with the home advantage, with all the ugly Orcs and Ibrox, do you think that just kind of edged it for them in terms of motivation, confidence?
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I would never. You would hope that it holds equal. It does hold equal importance for both teams, but when you sort of look at the bigger picture, it probably held more importance for Rangers for the examples you've just gave out. The that the whole optics of it, they'd lost 2 games. Drawn a defeat against St Mirren and Motherwell, and then if the potentially are going 17 points clear, their manager's well under the cosh. There's a lot of the fan base want them out. Yesterday's maybe bought them some time. So I think there was more pressure on them, and I suppose it might be a wee bit unpopular. You maybe need to credit them in a bit, because questions have been asked of that Rangers team throughout the past. When they're under pressure, they don't perform, and they tend to turn in these type of performances when the pressure's off. Now, in the grand scheme of the league, maybe that's why we get, as Celtic fans, taking it a wee bit better. Like, I don't imagine it's going to take a catastrophic collapse for us to blow this league. And maybe the fact that we did have that massive cushion, we still have a massive cushion after yesterday's game, that it's taken it a wee bit easier to take, and it's maybe where you can not act as, or not come across as disappointed a wee bit, and just sort of sit back and maybe not get involved in some of the nonsense on social media and things and bite back at folk. But I think in the grand scheme of things, the result meant more to Rangers. I think you make a good point about the cup final. I would say maybe Celtic edged it overall. I disagree with you there, but I understand what you're saying. But what I think it did give Rangers, it gave them a system that they believe in that can handle Celtic, because in the main in that cup final, they stood up against us. So when you come to Ibrox, they're at home, they know a way to play against Celtic. Yes, you've got to execute that game. And for the first sort of 5, 6, 7 minutes,
Franny, are you with us? Is your internet?
I don't know if I've just totally just froze there. I
Just
just totally froze. I seen it just totally.
Just a wee bit, but
I just seen it totally just.
It is January.
So I don't know if. I know. So I don't know if maybe just. It was like, I say, we did start the game pretty well, and then Scales obviously plays that pass, and that half I don't think we recovered. And that half, yeah, we had wee kind of moments. We had the Hatate effort right at the end of the half, and then obviously we start the second half again. I thought we started well, and then it was Schmeichel played this ludicrous pass that went out for a shy, and it just gave Rangers impetus again. That was it. We're gone. So I think to kind of round it back and go back to your, I think it meant, in the grand scheme of things, it probably meant more to Rangers and the Rangers fans, just because of how far ahead we could have been. I mean, we're still, like I say, we're still 11 points, but 17 to 11, that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A couple of good points here from the guys in the comments here. P. McLaughlin, Clermont's Rangers team has scored 3 goals against us 3 times now. So that was the 3 each at Ibrox, 3 each in the cup final, and 3 yesterday. Yesterday, it's like, albeit we did score 3 goals in 3 each game, you know, the cup final and in Ibrox, but it's still unacceptable in terms of like the standards that I would want to set for Celtic. And Smell the Glove as well here was talking about there is far too much of an advantage having 100% home fans only. Sooner away fans get back, then the better. And whether you have your own opinion about wanting to get the away fans back in, I do think there is some substance to that comment, where you're more likely to see a team getting a hiding when it's 100% the home fans in the ground. We've seen it a couple of times over the years now at Parkhead, and I think it's not likely for us to expect us to take 3 goals, 4 goals off them at Ibrox without anything said in return. In terms of like going into the game, I just had this feeling that anything could happen. I felt it was going to be a tight game. That's the only thing I was wrong. But whenever I said a tight game, I felt to our advantage. I didn't see it being a 3-0 to us, a 4-0 to us. I felt if we were going to win, it'd be probably a 1-goal margin, maybe 2 at the most. But I also could easily have seen a draw. It wouldn't have bothered me if we had drawn the game going into it, even though I felt quite confident. I didn't have the nerves. But equally, I wouldn't have been surprised if we lost. I wouldn't have been surprised if we lost. The only thing I didn't see coming was us losing by that margin. I didn't see us turning in that woeful standard of performance. I didn't anticipate so many individuals failing to bring their standard game. You know, these games, you should be motivated to play your best, but there were so many people who were under par. People who've, like Liam Scales, which we will get into, people who have done it on that stage before, in the Lions Den, against all the fans, and they've stood up and they've been counted and they've emerged victorious. So many people were disappointing. So I guess we will get into it. In fact, what was your expectations? Were you confident of a win?
I was confident of a win, Gav, but similar to yourself in the sense that I didn't think we would turn them over, I feel like. I mean, I did say I think I said to Stephen that if we got, well, it was my sister, I think if we got off to a really good start early on, considering Rangers' previous couple of games and the whole mood that you're getting from them, I think with the whole stadium being all Rangers fans, if we got off to a quick start and maybe got a goal early doors in the first 10, 15 minutes and be dominating that game, Rangers kind of not being in it, I think it could have got messy. It could have got a wee bit toxic in the stadium, and maybe we take advantage of that. And it maybe could have been a 3-0 or a 4-0, a proper doing and stuff. But I kind of thought the chances of that weren't high. If you like, I did think it would be a tight kind of cagey game, but I thought similar to yourself, I thought we would have edged it. With the odd goal, maybe a 1 or a 2-1. I thought we would have won it, but I was same as you, Gavin, just never seen that performance. Like, again, one-off game, they've, in the grand scheme of the league, like we said, that it's not going to mean, it doesn't mean much, so maybe a bit of pressure off Rangers in that sense. So they can maybe treat it like a cup final, if you like, a one-off game. So I can understand maybe us coming away with a defeat, but it was a manner of it. Like you said, there's so many players that have done it at this level more than once, have coped with it all, just failed to show up. And like you said, that you lose games of football. You can lose games of football. I'm not saying you accept that or it's great. You obviously, platforms like this give us an opportunity to dissect that a bit. But it's the manner of defeat that I think is annoying most fans. Certainly myself, anyway. It's just the way we performed for the majority of that game. It's just not acceptable for me. Sorry.
Aye. Right. Let's talk about the actual flashpoints of the game. The opening goal, we all quite clearly remember the fact that Scales had passed it right into the middle of our own half. To Bernardo. Raskin nipped in. Bernardo failed to kind of outmuscle him. Bernardo he kind of lost Raskin. I think McGregor was tussling as well. McGregor lost out, and then Raskin does a back heel to Hagi, and Hagi shoots from outside the box, and it looked quite slow, but the shot was well placed, and Casper agonisingly failed to keep it out. There was a comment which I showed a moment ago to say that Taylor was at fault for the goal. I'd imagine maybe that you might be alluding to Taylor wasn't shown for the ball whenever Scales had possession. Scales normally Scales, in terms of like muscle memory, he would look to feed the ball out to the channel, to his left hand side to Greg Taylor. And I'd imagine that the comment that I showed there was that Greg Taylor wasn't shown for it. And I felt that was kind of characteristic of the game itself. A lot of Celtic players weren't being brave to show for the ball, to receive the ball under pressure, and to move into space, to make options for their teammates whenever we did have the ball and we were trying to build attacks. But that particular goal, so we've had one person blame Taylor. You've also had Bernardo. Bernardo arguably could have taken a yellow card. It was still early on in the game. I don't think it's... Sometimes the referee might let you away with a challenge like that to bring someone down. But Raskin obviously was going to cause danger. He was getting past Bernardo and past McGregor, and we just didn't offer enough protection to our centre-backs at that point. And then Hadji, whenever he does get the ball, he shoots, and Cameron Carter-Vickers is kind of there. He's in the right position, but the ball goes kind of under his legs, through his legs, which, you know, that's just football. Sometimes that happens, but then you're hoping that your goalkeeper's going to be well positioned. He'll be able to thwart the shot, but it just kind of trickled past his outstretched arm. And that whole sequence of play, what was your thoughts? Obviously, you were raging whenever we conceded. I felt that we could turn it around. I didn't think it was a calamity at that point. I felt we just needed to regroup. But that sequence of play, where was your anger kind of directed to?
Well, Scales and the Taylor cut. I can only assume Taylor wasn't shown for it, and that's why somebody's blaming Greg Taylor, or it's just that he is a bit of the whipping boy as well. That maybe that's why he's getting the blame. But Scales, I mean, I'm not one to sound like a pile-on, because we've all credited, and rightly so, credited Scales for his performances, not just this season, but in recent times. But that, for me, just that is, it epitomises Scales at times. I think when he is on the ball too long, he kind of just, it's almost like he doesn't know what to do. And for me, it was a silly pass. If you're struggling to look for a pass, especially in this fixture, don't play it in the middle of the park like that, and put somebody under pressure. Just put it down the line, put it one over the top, get them turning. Maeda to chase something down. Yes, he might get away a free kick, but he's probably got to get a free kick about 30 yards out for the Rangers goal line. So for me, if in the fixtures that early on, when you're controlling the game up until that point, you don't try and give them an out and give them a lift in the game. Just, yes, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think Scales is probably saying the same thing. Why did I not just put that down the line and turn the Rangers defence? I appreciate probably the tactic is to try and, Brendan Rodgers is all possession based, I feel like, and we keep the ball, we're trying to get into certain areas, but sometimes you've just got to put it down the line and just turn the defenders. And from there, like you said, that Raskin nicks in ahead of Bernardo, and maybe Bernardo's looking at it going, it's early doors, I didn't want a booking now, because it can sort of play on the edge a wee bit, Bernardo, I feel like, and comes close to some of his tackles, because he's in your face and about your ankles. He maybe can give away needless fouls that can then result to a booking just with constant fouls. But from there, for a Rangers point of view, you're looking at going, they've set traps and they've nicked in and got a good goal for it. It's a good strike for Hadji. I mean, a really good strike for him. Like, yes, sometimes you don't need to blast in. You look at Hatate's goal in the 3-0 game. He sees a space and just passes the ball in on that day at Parkhead. But I have seen Schmeichel come under some criticism, and I totally understand that. I'm not going to totally criticise him myself. You can see he kind of takes a step to his right, and he's leaning to his right. I think he's maybe trying to anticipate what Hadji's going to do, and Hadji actually puts it in the bottom corner, and just that initial sort of shift to the right, Schmeichel just struggles to get back over, I think, and that's what's cost. I think if he doesn't make that move to the right, he saves it and maybe tips it round for a corner or whatever, but he didn't. And you're sitting looking at going, well, we've had a good start to the game. It's only 10 minutes. It's like you say, it's not a disaster. It's not like there's plenty of time to recover, but we never recovered. Never mind, then the game just never recovered for that moment, really.
Can I again touch on the point where the error came from the left side of our defence? Now, that pass that Scales makes, it's a bit of an unforced error. So somebody was pointing out that the reason that Taylor was shouting for Scales to go back to the keeper. And you know that Casper is always readily available to receive the ball. Now, the pass that Scales makes to go into the centre of the park is very, very dangerous ball to make. Now, Greg Taylor made a similar error at Hampden for, it might have been the first goal that we conceded at Hampden, a very, very similar ball. Now, that's two unforced errors. Now, whenever Greg Taylor made that at Hampden, I would imagine that Brendan Rodgers didn't just go through Greg Taylor for making that terrible error. He probably put everyone on notice. You don't make passes like that in your own half against a team of Rangers' calibre, okay? So
Mm.
Scales makes the exact same thing, and it just had me thinking that Rangers seemed more willing to allow us to make errors, unforced errors, on the left-hand side of the park, because that's where we're weakest at. And sometimes we can be ponderous in our passes from Scales and maybe from Taylor as well. And maybe they're just waiting for us to make those mistakes, and then they pounce. They're so quick on the press once they smell blood. I think they almost treat our left flank different from the right flank, where we're more kind of confident, we're more adept with like AJ and Cameron Carter-Vickers feeding balls into Kuhn, or feeding balls into Bernardo. We're just more assertive in that side of the pitch, and I feel that Rangers have a different approach. They're more kind of on us early on, and whenever AJ is trying to pass it out or Kuhn is trying to receive the ball with his back to a defender, they're more on us right from the get-go because they don't want to allow us to progress. But whereas on the left-hand side, I think they allow us to make that mistake, and that's when they pounce. And that's 2 goals that we've conceded now. Greg Taylor in the cup final and Liam Scales there at Ibrox, which kind of, it sets the tone almost. It gets their confidence up, and they know that they've got a game plan. You spoke about it earlier, where Clement knows that they've got a certain way of playing against Celtic. It worked to an extent in the cup final, albeit they never won, but they gave us a scare. And obviously they've come up trumps yesterday. So that was just kind of my observation from the first goal. And I was just flabbergasted that Scales made that mistake. It was just such a bad piece of play, infuriating. But anyway, we go 1-0 down. I didn't think it was the end of the world. I felt that we could just, regroup, trust in ourselves, the game plan, get a passing game going, and we could easily play our way back into the game. The second goal, that was from Proper. Forgive me, this was in the second half? I'm sure it was, yeah. And it comes from a corner kick, and it was Raskin who managed to get the header. I think we partly do zonal marking and partly do man marking. Maida was meant to be picking up Raskin, and it just wasn't close enough to him. Raskin had a decent game. Raskin won the header fair and square. Maida was nowhere near him. It was almost a free header. And I think it bounces off Ida. And it was just a horrible, unfortunate ricochet. And it works its way to Proper, who's at the far post, and he slots it in. I don't think you can do much to legislate for it after it hits Raskin, but what you can do is stop that header being won in the first place. Another goal from a set piece, and I think that Rangers kind of thrive upon that. What was even more disappointing was the fact that I felt that with Tavernier being out, I felt that would have nullified their delivery at set pieces to an extent, but obviously I was wrong. What was your thoughts on that particular goal? Was it avoidable?
I suppose every goal's avoidable, Gav, when you look at them, and I agree that Raskin winning the first header, he's not the biggest, so you're maybe looking at that, but him and Maeda are not necessarily the biggest. So it's one of them, because it kind of went to the front post, so you want to win that first header or get that first clearance in there. But like you say, Raskin wins the header, it deflects off Ida and Proper standing a couple of yards out of the back post. I think, I can't remember, I don't know if it was CCV that in the picture that is closest to him, so I don't know if he's maybe picking him up, so maybe I've got to ask questions to CCV, because I'd be certainly looking at saying why has a centre half got essentially all the space in the world at the back post there? It's, for me, that's poor marking. Whether that be man marking or the zonal marking, surely that's a dangerous area. Even if you're not man marking, you should have somebody within that zone to hopefully clear it. So I think there's, for a Celtic point of view, it's very poor defending of the set piece. It's a good point you make about Tavernier as well. I mean, you could look at that Rangers back four, and we just never once troubled that back four, which was, for me, disappointing as well. I thought Maeda, who's a big part in these fixtures, constantly showed Yilmaz inside. It showed him on his left foot, which I just never ever got. I was like, just hit him down the line, get him on his right hand side. He'll just technically taking him on his bad side. So I just never ever really threatened him enough for me. Scales, how he came out for that second half, when you consider Trusty never came out for the second half of the cup final and never turned in half as bad a performance as that. As I said, not what it sounded like on Barton's. I don't know, mate. I've honestly no idea, unless Brendan Rodgers thought, we can't play this bad again, let's play through it. But again, you could argue that in the cup final as well, saying we can't have that poor performance. I know in the cup final, Trusty wasn't using the ball great, but then you look at Scales, that the first goal wasn't the only time Scales lost the ball. I think he lost it about 2 or 3 times in that first half. You could just see he was gone. For me, he was absolutely gone in that game. It was just, anytime he was on the ball, I'm not saying it was a hot tatty, but you just felt he had 2 or 3 passes that just put us under, and you were going, you just don't want him on the ball now. And I kind of felt for him a wee bit. So I have no idea how he came out for the second half. But you could aim that a lot of folk have thought Hatate was lucky to come out for the second half, because the amount of times he lost it in good position. Well, I say good positions, lost it in dangerous positions, and they turned us over. McGregor was never really in the game. Kuhn was getting chances. There's plenty you could have taken off him. Maybe that was one of the ones saying it was not just one person. You could have swapped a lot of players at half time. But the second goal, Gav, was poor defending of a set play for me. And you're letting the guy taps it in for a couple of yards at the back post, nobody really marking them. That would be my big issue. Who was maybe picking him up?
During the game, before we get to the third and final goal, there was the incident on Nicholas Kuhn by Jeffy, and I've seen replays. There was one particular angle, and this was the angle that was shown the most on Sky Sports whenever Neil Lennon and Chris Boyd had discussed it, and it looked like Jeffy wasn't looking at the player at all. He went in for the challenge, and then they both turned around, and Jeffy, it looked like a natural movement from this particular angle, and Jeffy obviously just clocks him, arguably a straight arm, not the point of the elbow, but it connects right on with Kuhn's nose, and Kuhn goes down obviously with the force of it, and it looked at quite a tough blow to take. There was another angle that I've seen at the reverse angle where it looks far more violent, far more possibly deliberate. It kind of makes me think of, you remember when Simunovic got sent off for a flailing arm against Morelos? It might have been Morelos, Ibrox, and he gets sent off for that. It was actually that Conservative guy, Ross Douglas, who was a linesman on that day, and he just immediately couldn't wait to get his flag up and send them off for that. Kept on saying red card to the ref. However, whenever this incident happened, it was at Dickinson, that was his name, the referee. He immediately flashed the yellow card. What was your thoughts on that incident? So, as I said, there's 2 particular angles. Do you think it was deliberate? Do you think the yellow card was? Do you think it was the referee was too swift in making the decision? He should have waited maybe to ask for assistance from VAR. What's your thoughts on it?
First of all, I'm okay with the booking. I think the booking is the right call, which is maybe got to contradict what I'm going to say, because I understand what you're saying. The referee did make a quick decision on it, but maybe I don't know the referee's position at the time. I can't think if he had a great view of it, but you'd hope that he had a decent enough view. So maybe he's seen it, and how he's seen it, he's for it as a booking. And I know that like the angle that I think you're talking about, where it does look very, very not deliberate. It looks like just a natural sort of reaction, is the one where you actually see Kuhn sort of face on, if you like. But then like the total reverse of that, where you see Kuhn for the back. The one, I think if they were showing that quite a few times, and only that one, I think Jeffy would be bang to rights and it would be a red card. The one where you see it for, if you like, the linesman sort of a view, where Kuhn would have his back to the camera. That angle looks really bad for Jeffy, but when you see the reverse of it, I think it is a very natural sort of a movement. Natural movement in the sense that I think he's been clever in putting his hand up there, to protect himself, knowing fine well that Kuhn's there and he might catch Kuhn, but he's probably got to get away with it because he can argue that it is natural, it's a balance thing, but I think he is protecting himself. I have no issue with it being a booking. I think it was clever for JFJ. I think it would have been a harsh red. I would have 100% taken it at the time because it might have just gave us a wee lift. But I've absolutely zero issue with being. I'm with you, Gavin. I think yellow was fair for me. I think it's pretty petty. I think if we want a red card for
that. See the particular personal battle between Jeffy and Nicholas Kuhn. You remember in the cup final, Jeffy could have actually got sent off for this, but it seemed like VAR, the officials, nobody really paid any attention. But he kind of went right through it. It was kind of like in the cup final, he put his studs, breaking down his Achilles almost, and Kuhn crumpled into a heap. I looked at a really, really sore one, and I don't think there's any way that you do that without meaning to do that. I think. No. Do you remember like whenever you'd be playing football and your coach might say to you, let your marker know that you're up against him, let him know that you're there, and you'll go in really hard, and you know they might kind of go into their shell at that point, and because they know that you're willing to kind of do the dirty tactics. I just kind of feel that Jeffy does that, and he nullifies Kuhn to an extent. Kuhn obviously had a particular memorable period in the cup final where he sprinted away, but and he scored a goal. But I felt that he just had yards of space to run into at that point. But I feel sometimes when he's up against Jeffy, it might be a little bit more reluctant, a little bit more hesitant in terms of expressing himself whenever Jeffy is right in his face, because he knows that Jeffy might do things like that. So I understand what you're saying, that it was a deserved yellow, but at the same time, you felt it might have been clever as well from Jeffy. So maybe a little element of the dark arts from Jeffy. I just think that he's got that in his locker. And if he knows that he can do that to make sure that Nicholas Kuhn is going to have a quiet day, then he'll be doing it every single day until somebody calls him out for it. So I just think it's something to be aware of for the next games that Kuhn comes up against them. And the other thing is, I'm not against switching the wingers, Maida and Kuhn to go on, you know, just to kind of change things up if they're not getting any joy. And like you're talking about it as well with Yilmaz. Yilmaz is a left back playing at right back and instead of James Tavernier. You know, Maida really should have been testing him, but he didn't. Yilmaz actually looked as if he was enjoying himself in that game, and that goes for the entire back four and the keeper as well. Keep up, you know, in from the cold. Nobody even tested them. Hatate had one shot, that was it. You had Sterling, who's like a utility player, and he was taking a shot at centre back alongside Proper, who has acknowledged that he doesn't even like playing in this league. He doesn't like the aggression. You know, just a new back four. They hadn't really played with each other before as a full defence, and we gave them a comfortable day. And I knew that the middle to front for Rangers, they could cause us problems. They were capable of doing it. I said that they will put us under periods of discomfort during the game. But we never failed to kind of target and challenge the weakest part of their squad, and that was the defence. We gave them a comfortable afternoon. And maybe you were right in talking about Adamida, him starting instead of Kyogo. But again, hindsight. The third goal was a ball played from Alistair Johnson to Luke McCowan, who came on as a sub. Luke McCowan is on the right wing, and he's got Jeffy, who we're just talking about. Jeffy right behind him. Luke McCowan, he probably knew that the player was behind him, but I just think he was too lax. He wasn't switched on enough, and Jeffy just kind of went right through him. He nicked the ball, and then he just sped right down the wing. He kind of cut in. He had a shot, maybe had a pass. Cameron Carter-Vickers had a very good game, I felt, compared to everybody else, which, you know, isn't really saying much. Cameron Carter-Vickers is there. He makes the block, but it ricochets to Danilo, and Danilo is right in front of goal. You know, you can't legislate for that. It happens. No. It's just an unlucky deflection, just kind of like the second goal where it hits off Ida, falls to Proper, bang, there's a goal. So Danilo puts it away, 3-0. it was already game over at 2-0, but that was just the final nail in the coffin, and a horrible afternoon. But that third goal, is there anything that we can do to avoid that? Was Luke McCowan totally to blame for that? Was the pass justified from Alistair Johnson? I felt the pass was fine. It just Luke McCowan. I want to kind of be hard on Luke McCowan because I want him to succeed so much, and he knows what it takes. He knows what it takes. The standard that you need to deliver at Parkhead to get that jersey, and I think he's got the ability. But I just felt he switched off. He just felt, I'm going to get the ball here. I'm protecting it, but we need more. And he kind of let himself down in that moment.
And I thought it had similarities to Kyogo's goal in the 3-0 game where Taylor nipped in. It was a very similar pass played out by Rangers that day, and Taylor nipped in and passed it to Kyogo. By Alistair Johnson, zero issue with that passes. He's fizzed it in with a bit of pace. McCowan's just on his heels, and Jeffsy gets in there, and like you say, they break up the park, and it finds its way to Danilo, and he's about 10 yards out in the middle of the goal. But every striker's dream, I would imagine. So in that sense, it's I would have to put the blame at McCowan for that. I thought he kind of epitomised everybody, and when he came on, I thought it was McCowan's poorest performance in a Celtic jersey. But like I say, there's not many getting pass marks, so it's not picking individuals out. It's just unfortunate that he played a key part, I feel like, in the third goal. It was just it was a poor goal that summed up a poor afternoon. It showed. I would never say that Rangers were hungry and wanted more, but in that moment they looked like, I think in the majority of the game, when you sit back and reflect, that they did show a lot more hunger for us. And that goal, I feel like, from a Rangers point of view, epitomised that with Jeffrey nipping in to get it off McCowan, and then just breaking up the park, and still at 2-0 with 5 minutes left, they're still trying to chase another goal and put the final nail in the coffin, which essentially did it. It was a 3-0, and it's got to be unpopular, but it's probably what Rangers deserved if you really are truthful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really truthful. They actually deserved a scoreline like that, which I think that's, for me, that's what hurts the most. Like I say, you can lose games of football, you will lose games of football, and I'm not going to totally get my knickers on a twist. I feel like that's, I mean, I know it's obviously the first game of this year, but if you take it back to this time last January, it's only our second defeat. I think it's a second defeat, and the other one was against Borussia Dortmund. It's certainly their only domestic defeat in a year, I think, anyway. Somebody might correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've lost many games, but it's just the manner we lost. And I suppose the good thing is we've got another game on Sunday to try, and I mean, every professional will say that's the best way to sort of move on for these games, is get the next game out of the way. So we've got a tricky game against St Mirren, but it's probably ideal that we've got another game just so close around the corner to try and put this one to bed. But that third goal, just for me, summed up the hunger and desire that Rangers had that we lacked as a team on Sunday. Thursday.
Now, obviously, whenever we come away from a defeat like this, we've had 24 hours to kind of let the dust settle and let things cool down, you know. So whenever we do this kind of, as we call it, a post-mortem, we want to have a bit of balance about it. We don't want to go over the top. We want to kind of put things into perspective. So I want to just kind of talk briefly about the individuals. We're starting with Liam Scales. Now, he had earned all the plaudits up until the start of this season. Now we bring in Austin Trusty. Austin Trusty eventually gets favoured. He gets a run of games, but then in the cup final, he was just really, really poor at distributing the ball. He gets taken off at half time. Scales come back into the fold, and then it looks like Scales is, you know, back in the favour of the manager. And it looked like that was going to continue for the foreseeable future. But the fact that Scales had put in that performance, it looks like he might have set himself back again. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trusty comes back in this weekend. Don't want to focus too much on this weekend's fixture. I want to kind of talk about the individuals right now in terms of how do we react to this and moving forward. So I think that for Trusty to be taken out after a really one poor performance in the cup final, I think that Rodgers has to do the same to Scales. Scales was really deplorable. There was one particular pass that he made to Greg Taylor, and I swear that he missed them by at least 5 yards, and the ball went out of play. It was just such an inexplicable action. I don't know how he managed to do it. He was under no pressure as well. I just think that Scales has unfortunately put himself back, and he's put Trusty ahead of him again. And it's really, really disappointing to see, because I felt that maybe both of their confidences might be jeopardised now. What's your thoughts on it? As Scales went back in the queue, is Trusty ahead of him now in the pecking order? Is that how it works? Or will Brendan Rodgers persist again with Scales? Will he be ruthless? Is it ruthless?
I suppose it is ruthless because, like we say, Scales has performed very well this season, and especially when he came in for the cup final. I think he's actually, up until yesterday, performed very well. So, on one hand, I would say, like you said, without focusing on Sunday's game, but if Trusty was to start ahead of Scales, I would argue that's ruthless because you're dropping him on one bad performance, which is ruthless. And there's two ways to take that. I mean, certainly it looks how Scales is taking it in the past. He's taken it well, and when he's came back into the fold, he's played well. So I think what Rodgers will have in his favour is knowing that Scales, if Scales isn't to play next game, he'll know why he's not playing, obviously, because I would assume Brendan Rodgers will have a word on, but Scales will not be daft to go, I had a shocker there. I had a shocker. I'll probably not play. You've got to assume Trusty's doing it in training as well. So that it would shock me if Trusty's not back in the fold. I think Trusty, unfortunately, Scales gave Trusty the in really that Trusty was needing, because it is hard as a centre half to break a partnership, especially one that's not really conceding goals. It's easy for Brendan Rodgers to stick with it. Even though Trusty did cost $6 million, I know it should come down to that, but I don't believe Rodgers bought Trusty to sit on the bench. He's bought Trusty, I think, to partner CCV. But Scales is, in fairness to him again, has stood up and has been counted for, and you could argue for big parts of this season was your best centre half. So
and he's an animal. He's an animal at set pieces. I mean that in a positive way.
I think he is
so important at set pieces.
He seems to win his fair share of headers, whether that then results in goals or not. But you just look at the Rangers goal. He tends to win that first front post header, and that might lead to a shot on target, a header on target, or it might not. It might go wide, or it might flick on like it did to Maeda last week. So I do think he's better for set pieces skills, but I think unfortunately he's just played his way back. I still think there's an element of our fan base, very small element, I would say, that are desperate to go, look, we knew that was always in his game, that he would do that, but like just desperate for him to have a poor run, and just to go, well, there was a reason he was at Aberdeen, there's a reason he wasn't in, and things like that. It's certainly, like I say, it is all about balance. Scales is by far not finished at Celtic, but I think he'll be out the team for a couple of weeks anyway. Fitness depending, obviously. If Trusty and CCV are fit, I think Brendan Rodgers needs to go back and try and form that partnership again. I think just as harsh as it is, based off yesterday.
And hopefully, Cameron Carter-Vickers maintains his fitness, because that's the last thing that we want, for him to drop back out and for us to resume the partnership of Scales and Trusty. And saying that, I think that they're all fairly competent centre backs. Just you want one partnership, and you want to have the confidence that the guy on the bench can step up and do a job.
Yes,
it's just disconcerting whenever somebody gets dropped at half time for mistakes, and then the replacement comes in a similar game and he has a complete howler whenever he's already done it on that stage before. Now, moving on from Liam Scales, I'm not going to go through each individual here, Franny. However, there is one other particular player that I think we do need to talk about, and it's Reo Hatate. Reo Hatate obviously had a poor game. He wasn't the only one, okay? A lot of people did it. I saw an interesting question on Twitter, and the question was, is Reo Hatate the new Nietzsche? Well,
by the way, I seen that exact comment, and it makes total sense.
The guy kind of broke it down. He said, like, whenever Nietzsche was on it, he could look like the best player on the park. And Hatate sometimes can, sometimes he's the most entertaining player that we've got in our ranks. And I wouldn't disagree with that. But people say that you can tell when Hatate is going to be on it within the first couple of touches, the first couple of passes of a game. And people are also accusing him of being a great player once in every three games, once in every 4 games. And I guess it's the big games like this whenever you want him to stand up, you want him to be counted. He was brilliant, for example, in the Leipzig game at Parkhead, fantastic. But then against the following few games, he was just kind of so vanilla. And this was another game where you want your big players to stand up and be counted. You see him having conversations with Brendan Rodgers at the end of games, and you feel as if Brendan Rodgers knows that the guy has got something. He's got a unique talent. He's kind of mercurial in that regard. But it's just inconsistent. And the longer that he churns out performances like this in big games, then it has to be called out. So I want to kind of get your thoughts. I thought that he'd be the next player to go for a big fee at the end of the season, kind of free up room in the midfield, maybe bring in a Lennon Miller type. Maybe that's fanciful thinking. It's not going to happen. What's your thoughts on Nietzsche? Are you starting to turn, or do you not want to get carried away with this performance? Do you think this is not merited for us to kind of cause this pile on? Where's your thoughts on Reo Hatate?
Well, I think the Encham one is it's pretty bang on, because I think Hatate's a better player than Encham, but Encham on his day was absolutely brilliant. But he was a 1 in 5 player after that. But I did think Encham was arguably one of the best midfielders in Scotland when he was on it. Absolutely. So I totally understand that argument. And I think you're right that since the Leipzig game, I think Hatate's been pretty poor. He's not really turned in very good performances. The cup final, he grew into the cup final, but yesterday he was really poor, and he gave if we've got to be balanced and fair, if we're calling Scales out for giving the ball away, the amount of times Hatate lost it in Kier is just, he's great at taking it on the half turn and opening up teams, but when it's not happening for him, it's like he is a risk reward player, and it's high risk for high rewards, but it's also, the risk is also high as well, in the sense that the turnover when he does lose it in dangerous areas, it's a thing. You're not wanting to take that out his game, because that's what he does well. So it's a gamble you kind of have to take. But he lost it so many times in the half turn yesterday. He was really, really bad. He was another one that if he got hooked at half time, you would have no qualms about it. You'd have totally understand it. And I think that's where I was going back to my sort of like hindsight comment. Would it have been better maybe to start a McCowan or an Engels before Hatate to try and overrun Rangers? And that's when the tire, then Hatate, similar to the cup final where Rangers started to tire, he came into his own because he was taking on the half turn. The Rangers players didn't have the energy to kind of keep up with his speedy foot, if you like, and really nip in and get ahead of him or put enough pressure on him. But I do understand the fans' frustration on Hatate. And maybe there's a bit of that in Brendan Rodgers, like you say. You see him talking to him a lot after games or when he's subbed off. Because I think maybe Brendan Rodgers getting a wee bit frustrated, because there clearly is a player in there. Now, I
just think that, see, whenever you see a player has got something in them, I don't think. I think whenever you do have those conversations, whenever you do engage, I think you do it because you want them to fulfil the potential. I think if a manager ignores you, that's when you should be worried. But the fact that he does engage you in conversation after games quite regularly, I think that's a positive. But
100%.
There's only so many times that you can push and prod a player to try to get the best at them to flourish. Hatate, and I do agree with you to an extent that Hatate sometimes has been a wee bit more conservative now that Rodgers has taken over. But and then you need to be wary of, are you taking that kind of that element out of his game, where if he's not trying things off the cuff like that, then he's either playing safe or sometimes I think with Hatate sometimes either play safe, he'll try and do things and look brilliant, or he'll try and do things and he'll just look shite. Like just passes when he's getting the ball in the middle of the park, nobody's pressing him, and then he passes it to the opposition player. It's things like that which really, really frustrate you. And do you remember the moment in the game in the second half where Cherney ran through on the right wing, he cut inside? This one was when Vi was already playing at left back. He cut inside, which you shouldn't allow him to, because that's when he's at his most dangerous. You show him down the flank, but he cuts inside on his left, and then he hits it off the post. That all came from a pass to Hatate in the Rangers half, and Hatate lost it. Now, it might have been a difficult ball for him to control, but Hatate lost it. He got out-muscled, and his first reaction, Hatate, was to lay it spread-eagled on the ground, looking up at the sky. You should be getting right off your arse and chasing back. That's just what I don't like to see. There was a wee comment here from, we've got a Rangers fan in the comments, but he's not being rude. It was Ziggy Diamond. Thoughts on the Jeff T yellow card? He's a Rangers fan. He thinks it's a yellow, but your Celtic fans went mental over it. We spoke about it earlier on. We're okay with it being a yellow. There was one angle where it looked violent, another angle where it looked like he didn't. It wasn't deliberate. So it was a yellow. I think even Neil Lennon agreed it was a yellow. We move on. I don't think that for this performance we're going to get too caught up in that. It could have been given as a red. We would have loved if it was a red, but we've got no qualms that it was a yellow. So obviously talking about Hatate, kind of an annoying player. Would you want to persist with him, with Reo Hatate?
I suppose it's kind of my ability to answer in the sense that
would you want a more consistent number 10 creative player?
Yes, I would, but I would want a more consistent one, and I think Hatate can be that guy. It's like we said, it's getting that consistency out of him, because I think he has been very, very inconsistent this season. So it's trying to get that consistency out. Like you touched on, Brendan Rodgers is giving him time, as always seems to be in his ear and really chatting to him. So I think Brendan Rodgers has got the time for him. So he is just a frustrating player, because, like you say, we know he's got the ability. It's just we need to show it. And maybe we spell out the team for 2-3 weeks or 2-3 games. It might just give him a wee kick up the backside, if you like, to go, right, I maybe know as concrete about my position as I first thought it was, because even the Celtic fans, the argument is it Bernardo or Engels? Engels or Bernardo? It's never Hatate. Hatate's never in the equation. So maybe, I'm not saying he's sitting listening to podcasts or reading social media to see this sort of a chat, but he might have a wee bit of an inkling going, well, maybe I'm looking at the socials, I'm seeing some forums, maybe my position is a wee bit safer than I thought it was, and he's maybe just not having to turn it on. But I think a wee run of games out the team might do him the world of good. But then it'll tell you if he's got the attitude to say, look, I want this now.
Right, well, we're on our mark, and just to kind of bring a wee bit of positivity, I wanted to kind of remind you of a couple of results against Rangers over the years. On this day, 3rd of January, going back to 2004, Celtic beat Rangers 3-0 at Parkhead, and the scorers were Petrov, Varga and Thompson, and our lineup on that day was Douglas, Agat, Balda, Varga, McNamara, Petrov, Lennon, Sutton, Thompson, Larson, Hartson, and on as a sub, rest in peace, Liam Miller. A brilliant team back then, and even the Rangers team, they were no mugs, apart from, well, like Bob Malcolm was playing and Gavin Race. So with the exception of them, they had people like Kloss, Rickson, Moore, Berg, Ball, Burke, Arteta, Lovenkrands as well, Averladze. But going further back than that, Celtic also beat Rangers on the 3rd of January back in 1966. Celtic beat Rangers 5-1 in a league match at Parkhead, and Stevie Chalmers scored a hat-trick in that particular game. So it's not all doom and gloom, you know.
No.
We take the wins with the defeats and we move on.
But look at Martin O'Neill's first season, we battered them 6-2 and then got pumped 5-1 at Ibrox.
I know,
That's mad.
I know.
And then we went on to win the treble.
Yeah. A great kind of example, Franny, that you bring up there. So kind of in terms of moving on, I wanted to ask you one particular thing. So Brendan Rodgers signed a 3-year contract when he came back, and he said that he will honour that. He will see it through, and I think we all kind of believe that. And I saw some comments. Now, people were writing, saying in the comments that some people are getting carried away. The younger fans, all they've known is success, and the older fans are kind of calming their jets and saying that things like this happen. Now, I also saw a few comments on social media that Brendan Rodgers' style of play has got a shelf life. But I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this particular thing, because we're now moving into the second part of Brendan Rodgers' kind of contract now. We've got another season and a half before he leaves. And I think he will leave at the end of the 3 years. But I wanted to ask you about moving into this second part of his contract. It is, personnel-wise, a largely Ange Postecoglou team. But I wanted to get your thoughts on how will the team evolve. We've had players who've been here for a number of years now. If Brendan Rodgers was to persist with the same players, I think that whenever he does leave, then there will be a larger turnover of squad than would be responsible by the powers that be at Parkhead. I think they should see that we should continue bringing in players such as in January, but there needs to be a constant evolution of the squad. I think criticism of a winning team is merited. You should always criticise a winning team because it pushes them, it gives them new aims, new goals, new doubters to put to bed, you know. I think whenever they kind of find a comfort zone and you don't criticise them because, well, you're saying, oh, they've won so much. I think that's a dangerous game, and we only need to look at recent history to learn from that example. So I guess my point is we're moving into the next part of the Brendan Rodgers time. We've got a season and a half before he leaves. What evolution do you think that we could possibly expect? So I spoke to you about Hatate. Do you think that Brendan Rodgers might want to bring in a different type of number 10? Do you think that we might go to a 4-2-3-1? And I guess one of the reasons I speak about that formation is I think if we persist with Callum McGregor as a number 6 for a somewhat lack of protection for the back four, in games like this, it might get a wee bit more exposed as he gets older, especially as we kind of step up in competition in Europe. It just looks like he needs a wee bit more help in there. Now, we could have won at Ibrox, and maybe I wouldn't have been saying that. But I just think that, you know, it is worth kind of pointing out, maybe a 4-2-3-1, give the back four more protection. The amount of times that you hear Celtic fans on podcasts and on social media say we need a Wanyama type of player, we're probably always going to be saying that until we do maybe see a player come in like that, who can give the defence protection, who plays with authority, who's got physicality, where people are not running past him in the counter-attack, where he's got the legs, he's got the body to kind of calm that threat. Do you see any changes that Brendan Rodgers will take in? And as I did say, I'm guilty of repeating myself, it is largely personnel-wise an Ange Postecoglou team. Do you see any changes? I think the playing style will remain, but personnel, formation, can you see anything at all like that?
I suppose I suppose I could, in the sense, Gav, because it played like the 4-2-3-1 where he came in. That's kind of the sort of is it the kind of vogue? It's probably the norm, popular formation. I feel like I know Liverpool and Man City will kind of play that 4-3-3, similar to what we play the now. So it's really it's maybe the more what you call the more traditional formation than now that 4-2-3-1, and it maybe give Callum McGregor some reassurance in there and some help in there, like he says, as it advances through the years. But you would like to think, if we only think Rodgers has got to be here for the 3 year, in 18-month time, and that time I don't really think he'll get that bad that he needs protection, but it might poker saying Engels is a number 6 if you like, so maybe allows Engels to play in there, and it gives that balance of a right foot and a left footer. But do we really need 2 sitters in the domestic game? Most games at home, probably every game at home, and the majority games away from home. So you're maybe looking at that style for 2 games at Ibrox, really, and maybe cup games that you play them at. So I don't know. It probably helps us better in Europe. So maybe there is an argument to go to that, because obviously a lot of the personnel that's in there now would work for that. Your Maedas and Kun, I think, can still work in that 4-2-3-1 formation. But for me, I would probably look at the development of the team. It's also got hard for massive developments if we say that Rodgers is only going to be here for the 3 year, but maybe getting more taller, athletic type players like your Engels, like your Adam, he does that type of, even your Austin Trustees, like the typical sort of play you'll see down at the Premiership, where they're maybe not, they've obviously got ability, but they're not the most gifted and most naturally talented football player. They're just, their engines or machines are designed to play a certain way. So I think that's maybe where I think Rodgers might look to progress the team and get more athletic players, more players that can maybe handle the physicality, I feel like, games like yesterday and in Europe.
Mm-hmm. And the other kind of point, I know that we're going to be talking about Kieran Tierney, but if we were to bring in Kieran Tierney, which it looks like it might well be announced quite soon, in terms of the inverted fullback, do you think that might be put to bed? I don't think. Alistair Johnson, he just loves to be a right back up and down the channel. I think he's okay sometimes when he comes into the middle of the park, but I think he prefers the flank. He prefers that kind of graveyard shift. Kieran Tierney is exactly the same. I think he prefers running up and down that flank. I don't think that he's without. It's not his gift to come inside to do what Greg Taylor does. So I think that if Kieran Tierney is going to be our left back in the future, then we might see an end to that particular tactic as well. So that could be another kind of evolution as well in our playing style, if we were to do that. So in terms of the January transfer window, we won't stay on this for too much, Franny. But Kieran Tierney, what's your immediate thoughts? Are you excited about it?
Oh, totally excited. I mean, it's a lot of the heartstrings that are pulling in. Obviously, Tierney has got his injury issues in the past. And it's a good point you make about the inverted fullback. I think it certainly definitely goes more to the traditional way of a right and left back playing if we've got Kieran Tierney in. Because you need to look at Tierney's current situation himself, that's probably what's killed him at Arsenal, was the fact that the inverted fullback kind of came trendy, I feel like, and that's not to have a go, because obviously it worked absolutely fantastic under Ange, and obviously with Greg Taylor it's worked brilliant, even under Rodgers. But Tierney's all about, like you say, that graveyard shift, getting up and down the wing. So for me, yes, it comes as a gamble because his injury, but if we can manage Kieran Tierney, if you just look at the whole optics of it, we're going to the Premiership, a top team in the Premiership, if you like. Currently sitting second or third, I think, now, but they've been challenging for the title the last few years. Albeit Tierney's not been playing in the games, but just the optics of it, you're going to get a 27-year-old top left back for the Premiership. If you're turning that opportunity down, I didn't get it. And obviously, on that alone, I think it's a great sign. And then you take into consideration the whole Kieran Tierney factor of it as well. For me, it can't be anything but a good signing. Obviously, we all hope and pray that he's over the worst of his injuries. Surely it's kind of only going to not keep getting worse, but it's always just kind of going to be on a knife edge with him. But if we can manage him through, even get 35 games out of my season, and in an ideal world, the majority of them are your games against Rangers, your European games. I think that's a great piece of business, especially when it looks like we're going to get him for a nominal fee, whether that being loaned for the first wee while, and then he's signing on a pre-contract. A guy they sold 5 years ago for 25 million. It's a great piece of business, and on his day, he's generally as world class. So there's that to factor in. Whether he can get to the levels again, it's up in the air. I think it's going to be hard, but I think you get a fit and firing Tierney, you're getting a very, very good player.
I'm coming round to that because I've been sceptical about it. But I want to throw it back to you. Nobody doubts the guy's quality, okay? So for games like that, his quality is going to stand out. It'll be a massive upgrade on Greg Taylor. But I'm kind of mindful of like the Scotland in that Euros tournament. Well, I think it was in this first game, he gets crocked and he's out for the rest of the tournament. Now, say we bring in Kieran Tierney, and you're talking about like the big games, the Champions League games, the Rangers games. That's where he'll really make a difference. But what if it's the opposite way, where he's injured for those games, and we're going to get a smattering of games here and there where he is fit, but whenever it comes to the crunch, we're relying on his understudy. And that's kind of what I kind of talked to you about the drop-off in standard between Kieran Tierney, the fans' hero, the one that everybody loves, Mr. Celtic, but he's on the bench or he's up in the stand watching, and it's the understudy playing. I'm concerned about the possibility of that happening and what standard this understudy is going to be at. Now, I'm going to assume that Alex Vai is away at the end of the season, okay? So let's start afresh. We've brought in Kieran Tierney, but we need somebody else. Now, if you've identified somebody, a left back, and you think he's worth his salt, we want him to be a Celtic player, we think he's good enough, he might be looking at it and saying, well, you've got Kieran Tierney in the squad as well. He's in my position. So he's always going to play ahead of me. So what's the script? I'm only going to play when he's injured. So, and if that fullback that we're bringing in, the understudy, wants to progress in his career, will he be content with that? Or will we have to go for somebody who's somewhat compromised in his career and he wants that olive branch where he says, yeah, I'll take that deal and I'll play when I play and I'll sit on the bench when he's fit and I won't grumble about it. I just wonder about that. And how good is that understudy going to be? Like, we look at Alistair Johnson and Ralston, and God love him, Ralston would run through a brick wall for you, but when it comes to the crunch, you don't want to be dependent on him. You want your Alistair Johnson there. So that's the kind of the point I want to throw back to you. That's just my fear. But I'm really excited about Kieran Tierney, and I might be proved wrong, and I hope I'm proved wrong. And I hear people say manage his injuries. But I would throw back to you, Arsenal have got a far more sophisticated department of physiotherapy and sports science. And if they couldn't anticipate when to take him out and when to put him back in, how the hell are we going to do it? Because we don't match up to them in terms of their resources and their personnel who manage injuries. If he's injured, he's injured. And if he's not, he's not. For me, I think there's only so far you can, put your stock in sports science. So that's my point to you. I don't know. I've got scepticism about managing injuries. It will happen when it happens, and I've got scepticism about the drop off in his understudy. Or am I just being chicken shit here? Should we just go for it and see what happens?
No, I think it's very fair what you're saying. I think the problem is, I mean, Greg Taylor, and I'll probably hold my hands up, guilty of it myself, in the sense that one of Greg Taylor's, fans will maybe not admit it, but one of Greg Taylor's biggest problems was he was never Kieran Tierney. And that was a drop-off. You were going for Kieran Tierney to Greg Taylor, and I think that was his biggest problem. And if Kieran Tierney does come in, that the understudy, that is going to be the problem, is they're not going to be Kieran Tierney. And the understudy's got to be looking at it going, I've gone up against Kieran Tierney, because let's be honest, we're not signing a left back of Kieran Tierney's standard. We're not going to be running with two left backs. Unfortunately, we're just not going to be running with two left backs at that level, as much as we maybe like it. So it maybe is going to be where we, I mean, for me in an ideal world, I would tie Greg Taylor down. Yes, he's not to the standard of Greg Taylor, but we know what he'd be able to do. And you can maybe, I'm not saying it's an easy sell, because obviously Greg Taylor's at 27. He'll not have many big contracts left in his football career, so he's got to kind of be selfish and look after himself in that sense. But there maybe is an argument to say, look, Tierney's injury records are no brilliant, so you're going to get a lot of games. But Greg Taylor's maybe got to look at it going, well, I've had a lot of games here. Whether folk like to admit it or not, he's got a good trophy cabinet while he's been here, played a big part in them. So he might look at that and go, well, look at all the trophies I've helped you win, and this is how you want to reward me with a contract to be somebody's understudy. So I can understand if Greg Taylor doesn't want to sign under their terms, because I think at the end of the day, you're not signing Kieran Tierney to be your number 2 left back. You're signing him to be the number 1. So it is probably a hard sell to tie a Greg Taylor back down. So that then gets me to go to whether there's somebody in the youth setup that you can maybe, where Rodgers likes working with young players, that you can go, well, look, we'll advance you into the team. Because I do believe Alex Valle, I don't think he's got to be the one. And that's not to say I think he's a bad player. I don't see him coming in to be that understudy. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. And it might be, for me, I think our only 2 options, as much as my first one would be Greg Taylor, but I think it's a hard sell to say that to a guy that's been a senior player and a senior, one of the better performers over previous years, to say this, they essentially go, well, we're now wanting you to be number 2 to a guy that might come in and be cropped. So for me, I think it is going to be looking maybe at the youth setup, or a young player, bring in a young player and develop him, where the drop off is maybe going to be, it will be a wee bit, but in the hope that you can then bring that guy on and coach him into being the next Kieran Tierney, or as good as the next Kieran Tierney. So I think realistic, that's the route we'll go down, is bringing in a younger player, or promoting a younger player for the B squad and try and coach him through.
I think it's a risk. It definitely is a risk.
Oh, massive.
Time will tell. Time will tell. I think it's got the potential to go badly for us in terms of Tierney gets injured and the big games come up, the Champions League games, the games where you've paid your big money for, and we are starting off Kieran Tierney up in the stand and some fresh-faced spotty kid playing at left back who might be kind of overawed, or just somebody who's just not worth his salt, you know, a Moritz Bauer, somebody like that. But the thing is, I know that I'm being sceptical, and that's just kind of like my feeling right now as a Celtic fan. I hope that I'm proved wrong, and Kieran Tierney does have a change of fortune in terms of the injuries. I hope it really, really works out well for him and for Celtic. Speaking of left backs, I just saw a recent bit of news that Celtic have rejected an offer from Brazilian side Internacional to sign Alexandro Bernabé. The South American club tabled a bid which was below the £3.75 million that we shelled out to Lannis for the player back in June 2022. The sporting director of Internacional is still in Glasgow, and he's hopeful that he can talk Celtic down from their initial £7 million valuation, pounds, not euros, evaluation of the player. And Celtic are believed to be holding out for a fee of at least £5 million. So we'll watch that. Obviously, your starting bid is going to be low, but the fact that he's in Glasgow, hopefully they can agree to something that's. We're going to be getting a few million anyway, but I think we've been kind of cursed with them South Americans. I think that the only one that's really ever worked out is Emilio. I think everybody else, it just has not happened. Franny, we're going to wrap up soon, and thank you for kind of bearing with me as I've kind of mumbled through this. I've not hosted in ages, but thank you for that. And to the viewers, thank you very much for staying with us. One of the other names who's kind of appearing on the transfer rumours is Jota. Apparently, he's surplus to requirements at Rennes. I think maybe I saw 5 million, 6 million being touted as a possible value that you could obtain his services for. Second time round, will it go as well as the first time? Who knows? But Jota, the Jota that we knew, to have him in the ranks alongside Maida and Kuhn would be exciting. He's still a reasonably good age, mid-20s roughly. But certainly his career has nosedived since he left Celtic. Sometimes, though, it doesn't work out as well as it did the first time. Would you be sceptical of shelling out good money for Jota?
Okay, probably not, but it's more because we know what we can get from him. And I suppose with it as well, you look at him, as much as we said about Kieran Tierney's injury record, and that's a big risk for Kieran Tierney. That is not something you could label at Jota, because by all accounts, when he went to Saudi, he was unavailable because he was not named in the sort of a provisional squad, and they need to name X amount of Saudi players. And then he's went to Red, and I don't believe he's really picked up injuries since he left, any serious injuries anyway. So injury-wise, I don't think it's a big risk. But why you've got to look at it and go, is the Saudi league that good that he couldn't get in? I don't believe so. Yes, there's top players there, but surely he was better than some of them that could have made the squad.
And you've got a quota of the
you've got to have a quota. Aye. So it maybe just was plain and simple, the foreign quota. And then he's obviously went to Rennes, and it doesn't look like it's working out there. Is it just a guy that's lost his way? Maybe was Celtic just the right club for him at the time? So there obviously is that risky second time round that it might not be. But I think for me, if it's 5-6 million you're getting touted for this guy, I do think we need competition for Maeda, certainly on the left. We know Jota can play on the left and the right, so it's giving competition and cover for both the positions. For a guy 25-year-old, I believe he is, 25, 26, for 5-6 million, I think it's worth the punt, Gav. I think it's worth the punt, because if we get the Jota we know, that's a great bit of business. I'm not getting I'm not saying we're getting a £25 million player, but we're getting, if we can get a guy for about 5-6 million that we sell for 25, 2.5 years ago, or whatever it was, or 2 years ago, that's just mental for me. And so for me, I don't believe there's anything in the rumour. I think it's a lot of just fan talk, because obviously he's not having a great time. So I think it's just the fans maybe pushing this one on the socials. But for me, I'd have him back in a heartbeat as well, for the money that gets spoke of anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It's not going to be like a Paddy Roberts who came back and he had a terrible blighted injury-ridden second spell at Parkhead. I couldn't see that happen with Jota. However, it is kind of a wee bit concerning how he has lost his way so quickly. And 14-14 officially saying that they would take him back in a heartbeat. If you just go back to how good Jota was for Celtic, and it's not been that too long since he was playing in the hooks.
Exactly.
He was a brilliant entertainer for Celtic. The only thing he never had was pace, but he was still an excellent player. and he scored goals against the Huns as well. So,
Yes.
I guess we're going to look to wrap up. I did see a wee kind of snippet that Johnny Kenny, 21 years old, back at Celtic following a highly successful loan spell at Shamrock Rovers. Maybe that's that third striker that we should have. However, he'll hardly ever get a game because Kyogo and Adam Ida are really injured. Outings, I would say Palmer and Yang have to go, but you can't get rid of both of them and not bring in replacements. Yes. I just think that their time is up at Parkhead. Yang tries his heart out, but he doesn't have a final product, whereas Palmer...
It's just James's pal.
James's pal, exactly. We've all got our kind of favourites in this podcast. Ross with Greg Taylor and James with Palmer. But anyway, we'll look forward to Celtic and St Mirren Sunday. I'm actually going to miss it. It's my daughter's birthday. She's going to be 2 years old, so I'm not going to go to the game. However, I fully expect a win for Celtic. St Mirren are no pushovers. Stephen Robinson is a wily old manager. So it might not go our way immediately, but I think we'll persist and we'll get there. It might be an ugly win, it might be a scrappy win, but I fully expect it. And the condolence here is that despite the fact that we dropped 3 points against Rangers, 3 points can easily be picked up against St Mirren. It's the same points, no matter who you play against. It's just the pride, it's just the dent that you feel whenever you drop points to your closest rivals. Are you confident for the weekend as we kind of finish up on that topic?
I'm more confident, Gavin. I think Brendan Rodgers will have a good few days with him, maybe read them the right act a wee bit. I mean, the players will know themselves. They've underperformed yesterday, so I'm hoping a bit of self-pride, a wee bit of looking in the mirror and that, and they'll come out Sunday. And I'm hoping for it's obvious hoping for a comfortable game, but I think we may go out and put St Mirren to the sword and swat them away quite convincingly, I think, Gavin.
They were very popular a couple of days ago whenever they beat Rangers.
Yes, they were.
Our ever rivals. So anyway, Franny, thanks very much for joining me tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, Happy New Year to yourself and to everybody in the comments. Thank you so much for participating tonight. I know that you've kind of got one eye on the darts. I know nothing about darts.
That just one.
Is it just one eye?
Nah, he's just one. I've got it on the tail. He's just one. He's absolutely battered, Van Gerwen. Absolutely battered him.
Good for him. Good for him.
17-year-old man. Madness.
Aye. Well done for him. You remember Pelé at 17 years old, how he took the
World, won the World Cup, didn't he?
I know. Against Sweden back in 1958. Yeah. Anyway. Right, okay, we're going to wrap it off for tonight. Again, thank you so much to everybody. Happy New Year. And maybe we'll wake up tomorrow with the news that Kieran Tierney has signed. We roll the dice again in a left back situation. Time will tell where we go with that. But again, thanks so much. Again, good night, everyone. God bless, and we'll look forward to Sunday. Catches, Franny. Any final thoughts before we go? No?
Nah. It's rolling at Sunday, Gav. Roll it Sunday.
Right. Good night. God bless, guys. Cheerio.